Hello, friends. Aaron Sagers here, and we are live with our broadcast for the night. Now, I'm actually running a little bit late this evening, and the reason is I ran into some problems with the technology, as happens. So I apologize. I hope you forgive me for that. These things happen, right? But we're here now. This is what matters. And tonight, well, pardon me, you can hear a little bit of New York City outside my apartment in Brooklyn. But, so, how are you guys out there doing tonight? I hope you're having an excellent evening wherever you may be, and I think you're going to enjoy the conversation that we're going to dive into momentarily. Still dealing with a couple little items of technology, but getting this sorted out right now as we speak. Okay. I think we're good to go. All right. Hey there. Hey, Vera. Hey, Jack. All right. I think we're ready to go. So, first off, the topic tonight is curses. We're going to talk about curses in pop culture. Films that are supposedly cursed. And before we get to that, though, I want to toast all of you guys out there, wherever you may be. If you've got a drink, raise it. Say hi to you. And I am drinking tonight a little bit of Balvenie Caribbean cask scotch. It's quite tasty. A little hint of sweetness on that. I like it a lot. And curious to know what you guys have out there and how you are surviving. So curses and pop culture. Think about that for a moment. I want you to think about the curses that you know of, the stories you've heard, and also I want to take a moment to just put out a word from our sponsor for the Fireside Paranormal Chat, presented by Paranormal Pop Culture and by yours truly. So this is presented by Dead Run. Dead Run is the book that you can only get by Mike Maddox, only get available at Amazon Kindle. So that's Dead Run. Download it now. It's an apocalyptic story about a man that, in the new world that he lives in, finds out that if you run, you survive, and if you stop, you die. Have to keep moving. Have to keep on your feet, literally. So, Dead Run, thank you for being a sponsor of the Paranormal Fireside Chats that we're doing here tonight. Hey there, Robin. Robin's in the room. Good to see you. Hey, Robin. Jack, hello. LaWanda, good to see you. It's been a while. Good to see you. And Diana, good to see you, Di. Cheers to you. I think I've mentioned before, normally, I see each of you guys at different cons around the country. In this room alone right now, I'm seeing multiple people that are my convention people. Diana, I should be seeing you at Dragon Con in just a couple months, and I hope that does indeed happen. And Robin, I think the last time I saw Robin, who's in the chat room, was at the Penhurst Paracon. So I hope I get to see her again soon. hopefully we're doing another Penhurst Paracon. I don't have word yet, but I hope that happens soon. Jack, I think I saw you at, it was what, October? That was, right? Was it in October? We saw each other at the Chicago Ghost Convention, Ursula's Chicago Ghost Con, right? And Chad, my buddy Chad's in the room. Good to see you, Chad. And we've got to talk. I think I'm going to have Chad in here as a guest. Chad's got some crazy stories of his own. So, and my buddy Zachary, it's been way too long since I've seen this gentleman. A good man that I've had on multiple Comic-Con panels, always great at contributing a nerdy, if at times controversial opinion, and yet he's won out over the years. I think his arguments have won in the long term. I think I made some disparaging remarks about some movies, and he ended up being right in the long term. Okay, let's get to the meat and potatoes of the topic tonight. So the reason I'm talking about this is over on Shudder, which is a horror streaming service. And it's very good. I'm a big fan of Shudder. There is the TV series called Cursed Films, appropriately enough. And Cursed Films takes a look at, well, no surprise, films that are associated with curses. Some of those are some of the movies that it talks about up front include The Exorcist, which is perhaps one of the most famous ones. Poltergeist, which is definitely one of the most famous cursed movies, supposedly. The Omen, and then also this series examines the Twilight Zone, the movie, and The Crow. Those are the other ones that it covers. So those are some of the films that it talks about. But the idea of a curse associated with the film itself, is there any that you can think of? Or actually, before I even get to that, what do you think a curse is? What counts as a curse? Now, when we talk about some of these movies, we're talking about things like untimely deaths. And we're talking about, let's see if I can bring this up. We're talking about untimely deaths. We're talking about people that, that they passed before their times, premature deaths. Talking about unfortunate incidents. We're talking about, for instance, in the case of Poltergeist, a young girl, a 12-year-old girl, Heather O'Rourke, who had been in the first two movies and was filming the third. And during the course of the third movie, she died. She died unexpectedly as a result of septic shock, complications due to a bowel obstruction. And that bowel obstruction was should have been diagnosed, but wasn't, remained undetected. Also, Poltergeist, there was the story of Dominique Dunn, a woman that was, I believe, 22 years old, and she was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. Very tragic. However, in addition to that, there were tales of, was it Julian Beck, I believe his name was? A man who died of, I think, stomach cancer. And I think he was 60 years old. or Will Sampson, I believe, was the other gentleman who passed away. And also related to a medical situation. So when we talk about curses, it's typically a couple untimely deaths and then some things that are unfortunate but not necessarily shocking. The idea of a curse itself. I think it's worth looking at what a curse is. A curse is a prayer or invocation for harm or injury to come upon someone. Cause of misfortune or solemn utterance intended to invoke supernatural power to inflict destruction or punishment on a person or a thing. The idea of curse words, profanity, which aka is profane, blasphemous, vulgar, words to defile, debase, desecrate. In the Bible, it is said that you should shun profane and vain babblings, for they will increase unto more ungodliness. I grew up in the South, so instead of cursing, we called it cussing. Not just interjections, but words intended to harm. I hope you get what's coming to you. I hope you rot in hell. Here's a good one. I like old school curses. May your daughter's hair grow thick and abundant all over her face. John Zaffis, I remember talking to him about curses, and he said that a curse really falls in two categories: cursed people or generations, or cursed items. But this is not to be confused with bad luck or hauntings. So let's talk a little bit about how curses are shown in pop culture. Let's see if I can get this screen up again. Oh, well, we'll dive into this. Is in pop culture, but not really a movie, not a cursed movie. But the Hope Diamond is a popular cursed item. Supposedly, it claimed Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, King Louis the 16th, Marie Antoinette, King George the Fourth, a lot of other people. Supposedly, the curse goes back. Reports of the curse dates back to 1909, and well, the Hope Diamond is a 45 carat diamond, notable for its clarity. The diamond goes back to 1642. And supposedly Tavernier made a trip to India, stole the diamond from the statue of the Hindu goddess Sita, and Tavernier was then torn apart by wild dogs on a trip to Russia. So he sold the diamond, and then that happened. So, he messed with the wrong thing. And also, like, other items sort of similar to that, cursed items, are like King Tut and King Tut's tomb. Those are cursed examples. But according to Zaffis, it doesn't. A curse. Let me see if I can actually get Mr. John Zaffis here on the line right here. If I can get Mr. John Zaffis right now, I will do so. Hold on, let's get Zaffis here. Whoa. That's creepy. All right, we're gonna exit out of that. I honestly don't know what's happening. This is not supposed to happen. There's a voice coming through. I was reading this scene, and that's odd. Some weird, creepy stuff was just happening there, and I don't even know precisely what that was. And I don't know. It was supposed to be John Zaffis's voice, but that was not John Zaffis coming through. And it wasn't the quote that I expected. So I don't know. That was odd. Anyhow, so weird. It's always funny when stuff like that happens. But let's go through a couple other curses. So let's dive into the Exorcist curse. The Exorcist curse is supposedly the curse of injuries and mysterious fires. A set was set ablaze. Supposedly 9 people were killed, and connected to the production itself. There were people that went and saw the movie were plagued by troubled pregnancies and illnesses and everything. And actually, what's funny is the Exorcist movie itself played that up. They used that as a bit of a PR stunt. I mean, some things did happen. A lot of it was just misfortune and bad luck, but it became known as a curse largely because of the studio itself. Like, they decided that this would be a good PR mechanism. So, the movie studios do this. Another example is The Omen. When The Omen came out, I mean, it is worth saying, going back to The Exorcist, it is worth saying that it's not cursed. I would say, like, the biggest issue with The Exorcist is, so if you take the perspective of certain theorists, paranormal theorists, when you're invoking something demonic or playing with certain forces on camera, you're still doing it. There's no faking it. You don't call cut and it's done. If you're trying to invoke something, whatever forces are out there are going to acknowledge it as legit. And that's one of the things kind of levied against The Exorcist, that they were toying around with these other forces and that perhaps they unleashed something. I personally say that it was a lot of bad coincidences and perhaps some mismanagement on set. Linda Blair, the actress that played Reagan, was famously injured. Her lower back was fractured during that bed thrashing scene, and she developed a lot of problems as a result. Well, that was also because the tethering on that harness came loose, and perhaps they shouldn't have had a child actor in that situation to begin with. So I don't know that I would call that curse so much as mismanagement. Although I will say that there's lore that supposedly Jeffrey Dahmer was obsessed with the third movie in the Exorcist franchise and was watching it when he was arrested. But, another one is Rosemary's Baby. Supposedly, after filming 1968's Rosemary's Baby, a movie, so it was a movie about a woman impregnated by the devil, to bring on the Antichrist. Director Roman Polanski did lose his wife, Sharon Tate, who was pregnant at the time, at the hands of the Manson family. So I don't think that's a curse. It's just sadly a bad coincidence. But okay, let's say when you film something connected to the devil or the dark forces and bad things happen as a result, I don't know that's a curse. That's more, if anything, haunted or provocation, acknowledgement. That's not really cursed territory if you want to take the belief side of it. But a couple other ones include like The Omen, 1976 movie, also about the Antichrist. Star Gregory Peck narrowly escaped death from a plane crash. Actually, two separate members of the crew were on flights that were struck by lightning, but both survived. Now, Peck's son would later kill himself, and some crew members narrowly avoided death. Director Richard Donner's hotel, or he was in a hotel that was bombed by the IRA. And special effects designer John Richardson was in a collision that he filmed the decapitation scene, and then he wasn't in a collision where his assistant, who was in the passenger seat, was decapitated. So, again, if you want to take the belief perspective, that's not really haunting. That's more provocation. If you want to take the coincidence side, it's coincidence. The filmmakers of The Omen did use it as a part of the publicity surrounding the movie. They did lean into it, and then there's a whole other perspective, which this TV show Cursed Films goes into, which is that maybe it's not haunted. Maybe this is actually sort of blessed by the devil in a way, because a lot of the main people that were actually involved filming made it out safely. Exorcism of Emily Rose. We could try this again. If I can get this fired up, I will share this screen. Exorcism of Emily Rose. Jennifer Carpenter said when we were shooting, her stereo, when they were filming, her stereo kept turning on in the middle of the night, and it started playing Pearl Jam's Alive, but just the I'm Still Alive. That doesn't really sound so much curse level either, but sounds kind of creepy. The Dark Knight. Supposedly another famous cursed movie. Heath Ledger died of accidental overdose. Christian Bale eventually suffered some criminal accusations. Morgan Freeman suffered a scandalous accident. Stuntman died in a fatal accident. But for me, that sounds like coincidence as well. So far, I'm not hearing a lot of like cursed films out of this, so much as just bad coincidence. The Amityville Horror, the remake anyhow. The remake starring Ryan Reynolds. Supposedly, just before filming began in 2005, the body of a dead fisherman washed ashore on the set of the Amityville Horror remake. And then just before, surrounding that, actually, George Lutz, who apparently hated the remake, died. Also just seems sort of like coincidence. I don't know. So far, I'm not being won over by the curse idea. But wait, there's more. What about this one? The Conqueror, John Wayne movie. This one's pretty notoriously cursed, according to pop culture legend. The victims include John Wayne himself, Susan Hayward, Howard Hughes, and 91 members of the crew who all died of cancer. Now, perhaps there's more to that one. Anyone know that story? I'll tell it to you. So that 1956 film, The Conqueror, was about Genghis Khan. It was a film directed by Howard Hughes himself. There were some odd happenings on the set. A flash flood nearly killed the entire crew. And lead actress Susan Hayward did survive an attack by a Black Panther. But John Wayne died of lung cancer. Susan Hayward died of brain cancer. Howard Hughes, well, malnutrition and craziness. Another actor on the film committed suicide, but he did so after he discovered that the cancer he had was terminal. Yeah. And let me see here. Jack calls it test range. So let me add more info to that. The Conqueror spent 13 weeks filming in Utah's Snow Canyon, which was the destination of testing from the U.S. Army's Yucca Flats nuclear weapons tests in the 1950s. And also, it didn't stop there with 13 weeks of filming. Howard Hughes shipped 60 tons of nuclear irradiated, contaminated dirt from the Snow Canyon back to Hollywood for additional filming. So, curse? No. Bad luck and bad mismanagement. I think a lot of times you can connect mismanagement or outright negligence to some of these curses. Here's one that you might know. Superman curse. Supposedly everybody that has played Superman has met either a end to their career or, frankly, a untimely end. George Reeves, John F. Kennedy, Christopher Reeve, Marlon Brando, Margot Kidder, Kirk Allen, Lee Quigley. Everyone involved is Superman, except, and you can't really make the argument that Henry Cavill has suffered from the curse, who is the recent Superman. Brandon Routh seems to be doing just fine. And Taylor Hoechlin, who is currently Superman on the CW. He seems to be doing quite well for himself. He's got a spinoff. But the story is that being associated with the strongest man on earth will leave you weaker, either with your family, your career, or your health. Connected mainly with film and live action portrayals, although the Superman video games are notoriously doomed, but they're typically pretty terrible. And, oh yeah, missing Dean Cain as well, Carly says. Missing Dean Cain. He seems to be out there doing okay. JFK comes into play because he was in a comic featuring him and Superman, which is an interesting one. But when you line up some of these other deaths, again, maybe not cursed so much as coincidence. George Reeves died by suicide or murder, depending on which story you want to believe. JFK was obviously assassinated. Christopher Reeve, accident and heart failure, ultimately. Marlon Brando did suffer personal tragedies. Son and daughter died and failing health. If you want to add in Richard Pryor to that, he had multiple sclerosis and then suffered a cardiac arrest. Again, just seems like a series of unfortunate events, not curses. But I'll tell you one that I think is actually maybe not cursed. Oh, Tom Welling. I totally miss Tom Welling, and he's doing fine. He's enjoying his retirement. But here's one that's genuinely weird. The Rebel Without a Cause curse. James Dean's car curse. Some of the victims supposedly involved: James Dean, Natalie Wood, Sal Mineo, maybe up to 8 or 9 others. Now, what's the origin? This is where it gets weird. I think the origin on this one might be Alec Guinness himself, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Alec Guinness supposedly said to James Dean that if you get in that car, so James Dean purchased this sweet little ride, and Alec Guinness saw him in it. and there was a point of pride. Alec Guinness said to James Dean, "If you get in that card, you will be found dead in it by this time next week." James Dean was dead a week to the day later. This was a customized 550 Porsche Spider, customized by George Barris. The wrecked carcass was purchased for $2,500 after James Dean's death. Soon after it was purchased, it slipped off its trailer and broke a mechanic's leg. Barris sold the engine and drivetrain to Troy McHenry and William L. Exrid. And while the two were racing against one another in cars that had parts from Little Bastard, that was the name of the Spider, McHenry lost control and hit a tree, killing him instantly. And William Exrid was seriously injured when his car suddenly locked up and rolled over while going into a turn. Each car had parts from James Dean's vehicle in it. George Barris still had 2 tires from the 550 Spider. Now, those were untouched in the accident that killed James Dean. He sold them, and not long after he sold them, both blew out simultaneously, causing the new owner of the car to run off the road. I mean, there's so many things that are associated with this. Two thieves actually tried to steal the car, what was left of the car George Barris had. One of the thieves' arms was torn open by trying to steal the steering wheel, while the other was injured trying to remove the blood-stained tartan seat. George Barris tried to hide the car, but was convinced by the California Highway Patrol to lend the cursed heap of car to a highway safety exhibit. So this supposedly cursed car, called Little Bastard, James Dean's car, went on to be part of a highway safety exhibit. The first exhibit was unsuccessful because the garage that housed the car caught fire and burned down. And then part of the car was on exhibit at a local high school, which ended abruptly when the car fell off its display and broke a nearby student's hip. Little Bastard, the car, was being transported when the truck that was carrying it lost control, caused the driver to fall out and get crushed by the car. The California Highway Patrol decided it was done with Little Bastard, the car, and while transporting it back to George Barris, the car just mysteriously vanished and has not been seen since. So, and I don't know if I can play this. So James Dean himself filmed a PSA 2 weeks before his death. And let me see if I can bring this up. I've been having some issues with video, but let me add to the stream. Hopefully you guys can hear this. Still getting weird sound effects there. There must be something playing in the background. And I don't know what that is. Bear with me. Whatever sounds are happening, let's try to knock them out of this. Okay. Let's see if we can play. Well, drat. I can't get that video to play, but we can move on. Yeah, I know. The mic is double picking up the audio. It's not just that, but for whatever reason, it's just not picking up the video feed, but we're working on it. Let's see what other interesting curses out there. I mean, we could talk about the Poltergeist curse, but I feel like that's so popularized, and I really don't think. Well, okay. Let's talk about it. The Poltergeist curse. Heather O'Rourke, 12 years old when she died. Dominique Dunn, 22 years old when she died. Will Sampson, 53 years old from kidney failure. He also had a transplant. Julian Beck, 6 years old. He had stomach cancer. So the origin of this curse supposedly is the fact that there was real skeletons used in the filming of the Poltergeist. Real skeletons used in the swimming pool scenes. Cheaper to use those than plastic skeletons. Jo Beth Williams revealed this in 2002. I believe that was in the True Hollywood Stories, The Curse of the Poltergeist. So let me let that sit with you for a moment. Okay, so they used real skeletons in the Poltergeist. Did that cause a curse? Did that cause the death of Heather O'Rourke, or somehow lead to the death of Heather O'Rourke and the murder of Dominique Dunn? Jack asks, didn't Julian die during or just after the one he was in? I forget exactly when the timing was, but he did not survive to film the third movie. However, they kept his character in and used prosthetics to sort of falsify that character. Here's what I'm going to say about this one. It's not a curse. I don't think it's a curse. I think it's just tragedy. Something that I highly encourage you guys to check out the documentary series Cursed Films, but using real human remains, real skeletons in movies is not a new practice in Hollywood. Going back to The House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price, I believe. Frankenstein before that used skeletons in those movies. It is cheaper, but it looks better. It looks real. So I don't think that we can associate that with a curse. I think it's more that this is an unfortunate turn of events. I mean, it is interesting. So wrapped up with the Poltergeist curse is the Hancock Tower, which was a setting for Poltergeist 3, which is a supposedly haunted and notoriously haunted building in Chicago, where a lot of odd things have supposedly happened, and Heather O'Rourke herself is said to haunt the Paramount Studios of Stage 19, California, and supposedly her ghost has been seen around. I don't know whether or not that's true, but I don't think it's a curse. I think it's just Andrea. Good question. Were the remains taken with permission from the family? Now, I don't know where these skeletons were purchased from, but typically, I mean, people have sold off their bodies for science or for use. So I'm willing to bet that there was some level of consent involved there at some point. And Dory brings up a good point. When tragedies happen, people naturally look for something to blame. We also look for patterns. Much like if I were to look at the patterns in my ceiling or in the wood grain right now, I could probably see a face. Humans want to find patterns. We want to make sense in the things that we encounter. Here is a pretty cool one, though. Not cool. I mean, it's terrible, but not one that many people know about. Supposedly the curse of Atuk that claimed John Belushi, Sam Kinison, John Candy, and supposedly even Chris Farley. Of course, John Belushi died from overdose. Sam Kinison died in a car crash. John Candy died heart attack, and Chris Farley died from an overdose. Has anyone hear of this one? All right, well then, let me be the one to talk about Atuk. Atuk is a movie. It was supposed to be a comedy movie about Atuk the Incomparable. It was about a Eskimo in New York City. The supposed story around it was that John Belushi took interest in the film and shortly took interest in the film right before his death, which was in 1982. Sam Kinison then took interest in the film. And he actually filmed one scene in 1988, but he was unsatisfied with it, and then he left the production. He died in 1992. John Candy was supposedly reading the script in 1994 when he died a day before John Belushi's death anniversary. Not really a coincidence, just an odd fact. Chris Farley was about to accept the role when he died in 1997 of overdose. In 1994, John Belushi and Sam Kinison's friend, who had read and worked on the script, his name was Michael O'Donoghue, died of a cerebral hemorrhage. In 1998, Phil Hartman was murdered, and he had been seen with the script, and Farley wanted him in a supporting role. And actually, if you go back and listen to the Anchorman DVD, director Adam McKay even talks about the movie and offers Will Ferrell the role. I don't know that I so much think that one's a curse, but it has a lot of odd coincidences. You also have to look at the fact that, again, a couple drug overdoses here, and a lot of fast living, and also maybe guys not living the healthiest of lives. So I don't know how much of that is actually curse worthy. But let's see. What other curses do we have here? There's a lot of sports curses. There's the 27 Club curse, which someone mentioned that. A lot of musicians that have died at age 27. Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Brian Jones, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, and at least 40 more have joined the 27 Club. Dave Alexander from the Stooges, Ron McKiernan from Grateful Dead, Basquiat, the artist and musician. Actually, when I first talked about this topic a long time ago, I was talking about the 27 Club, and I said, thankfully, Amy Winehouse is in the clear. And shortly after I gave that presentation, she passed away. I think it's worth noting with these, again, you're talking about a lot of people that lived fast lives, dealt with a lot of substance abuse, perhaps, live fast, die young, leave a good-looking corpse. Seems like there was a lot of that mentality there. But okay, so Andrea says it seems like you're really not into curses. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Play devil's advocate. So let's say curses are real. First notable member of the 27 Club is Robert Johnson. Now, Robert Johnson, the famous story with him is that he sold his soul at the crossroads to the devil. He even sings about it. Me and the devil walking side by side. You may bury my body down by the highway side so my old evil spirit can catch a Greyhound bus and ride. Robert Johnson was one of the first members of 27 Club. Did Robert Johnson... Monica Cabrera says, I cursed her. Amy Winehouse. I don't think I have that kind of power. I will say, here's a weird... It's easy to make tragedy about yourself, and I don't want to do that. But you do remember where you are when certain things happen. And I will say that when Amy Winehouse passed away, it was during San Diego Comic-Con. So July, I guess. And I was on the line for a very big interview with the BBC. And I was very excited about this. It was a very high-profile kind of thing. And I'm online. I'm on hold. And then they're like, we're just going to need another minute. They're like, come back there. Yeah, we're going to have to cancel this interview. Amy Winehouse just died. And that was how I found out that Amy Winehouse died, was by me having my interview with the BBC canceled. This is not me having sour grapes. It's just the way that I remember and relate that story. It is tragic, and she was a tragic loss. But just something that I think about. That's how I found out. But that said, okay, Robert Johnson was one of the first members of the 27 Club. And I don't know. I find that one kind of notable. I don't know if he did sell his soul to the devil. But since then, we've certainly have seen patterns about curses. Zachary says, I'm one of the first few skeptics you know who is open-minded but is no W. It can be explained that he'll do it. But if it can't, then I'll seek answers. Well, I guess let's just talk about curses, right? Like, I've often said that if you believe you are cursed, you are. Then suddenly every bit of bad luck that befalls you fits a pattern and almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it gets in your head. You carry that around with you. It's like a cloud hanging over you. Suddenly you start to anticipate it. You start to expect bad things and curses, as a result of that curse. So, do I believe curses are real? Sure, because I think we can internalize it. And it becomes a part of us. Do I think supernatural curses are real? Yeah, maybe. The idea with the curse is that it has to be placed upon you by someone else, typically. Someone has to set out to put a curse on you, according to theory. Now, I was trying to play a message from John Zaffis earlier, one of the finest people that I know, one of the people that I trust implicitly. And he talked about curses. I've seen objects of his where there were curses associated with it, maybe even a curse embedded in an object of his. And he's told me odd stories about people that were impacted by whatever hex or curse that was placed upon them from someone else. So I guess at the end of the day, I don't dismiss the idea of a curse. I don't think these movies are cursed. I think this is just a lot of unfortunate coincidences. I think it's a lot of, at times, mismanagement on production. I think that tragedy happens. People die. People die horribly, and it's so sad and unfortunate, and we look for a reason as to why it happened. Why was a young girl, why did she die at age 12 from a bowel obstruction of something that could have been detected and operated on and fixed? Why was a 22-year-old girl murdered by her ex-boyfriend? Horrible things happen, and in a universe that sometimes seems chaotic and senseless, we look for reason, and that is a very human thing to do, and that's okay. But I also think we run the risk of trivializing those deaths and trivializing those tragedies by associating it with a curse, because at the end of the day, those were human beings, and they died badly. And if we wrap it up into a curse, we fail to learn a lesson, some sort of lesson out of all of it. It almost, they fit a narrative and they cease to be humans, and it just becomes too much of a trivial death. And I don't like that, and that makes me unsettled. But look, you're talking to a guy that spends a good portion of his time researching and looking into the paranormal, so I think there must be something more to some of it, just maybe not that. So that's kind of where I am on curses. I have a lot more material. I have actually way more material than we even got into. I didn't even touch on sports curses, or Bobby Lane, or the Red Sox, or the curse of the Billy Goat from Chicago. A lot of stuff there. So we might have to revisit this. And I do apologize for whatever reason, the video feed not coming in. And I think there was some, I don't think it was a ghost or paranormal or spooky. I think in the background on one of these, there was some sort of audio that was just playing that I did not know was operating. So that said, before I let you guys go tonight, I'm going to take a sip of this lovely Balvenie single malt scotch. I appreciate them sending this my way. This is Caribbean Cask, extra matured in a rum cask, 14 years aged. Gonna take a sip of that, and then I'm going to ask you guys, do you want to hear spooky urban legend story? If so, I'm going to give you one. Thank you, Monica. Yeah, it is actually quite tasty. Here's a classic one. Lexi, the whiskey is not cursed. The person consuming the whiskey might be cursed based on my speech patterns right now. How about the babysitter? This is a good classic one. Good classic urban legend. I just kept this book out, so I'm pulling from this one. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Collected by Alvin Schwartz. Drawings by Stephen Gamel. They, of course, don't own these stories, but this was a great collection of tales, which they did. All right. Let me wet the old whistle. The babysitter. It was 9 o'clock in the evening. Everybody was sitting on the couch in front of the TV. There was Richard, Brian, Jenny, and Doreen. Doreen, she was a babysitter. The telephone rang. Maybe it's your mother, said Doreen. So she picked up the phone, and before she could say a word, a man laughed hysterically and hung up. Who was it? asked young Richard. Just some nut, said Doreen. What did I miss? turning her attention back to the television. At 9:30, telephone rang again. Doreen answered it. It was the man who had called before, saying, "I'll be there soon." And he laughed and hung up. "Who was it?" the children asked. Doreen, unconcerned. "Some crazy person." 10 o'clock. Telephone rang again. Now, this time, Jenny got to it first. And young Jenny, she asked, with wide eyes, curiosity, "Hello?" Same man on the other end. "One more hour." He laughed and hung up. Jenny, with a tinge of fear in her voice, said, It was the same man. He said 1 more hour." "What did he mean?" "Don't worry about it," said Doreen. She brushed it off. "It's just someone fooling around. Just a prank call." "I'm scared," said Jenny. "Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Your parents will be home soon." 10:30. Telephone rings again. Doreen picked it up. The man said, "Pretty soon now." And he laughed. That laugh, it was just chilling at this point. And Doreen had had enough. "Why are you doing this?" she said. But he had hung up. "Was it that guy again?" asked young Brian. "Yes," said Doreen. "I'm going to call the operator and complain." Meanwhile, the operator told her to call back if it happened again. And at that point, she would try to trace the call. Some time had passed, but 11 o'clock. The phone, it rang. Doreen answered it. Didn't say a word. "Very soon now." And of course, that laugh again, and he hung up. Immediately, Doreen called the operator. Almost at once, the operator calls back saying, "That person is calling from the telephone upstairs. Get out of there." Just then, the door upstairs opened, and a man they had never seen before started down the stairs toward them. As they ran from the house, he was smiling in a very strange way. And a few minutes later, the police arrived, and they found him and arrested him. That's not how I remember this story going. First off, this is how we know that this story is a little bit dated at this point, because Doreen is in the house and she calls the operator, and she doesn't what was it like? Actually, when I was younger, what do? We hit like star or something to find out where the number what the number was, to do a reverse dial or whatever. She didn't do that. So obviously this was set before then. She calls an operator like Mabel from the Andy Griffith Show, and not the police. And plus, she didn't have a cell phone or a smartphone. So the message here is, first off, Doreen, girl, as soon as someone starts prank calling you and telling you they're going to be there, immediately, maybe you should be calling the police or doing, I think you can be a little bit more proactive. Secondly, get them kids out of the house. You don't want to keep them in there. And plus, the story as I originally heard it was, I mean, I don't think Doreen made it out alive. So maybe I was listening to the more gruesome version of those stories. You can't call on the same line. Okay, solid point. Solid point, Robin. There was another one. Did you guys ever hear the one? I don't know if I have it, but about, again, a babysitter. It was always babysitters, right? And there's a reason that it was always babysitters, because first off, it was typically a younger person. It meant that there were no adults around, and it also typically meant that it was a younger woman. So very kind of patriarchal kind of tale of a young woman who was in a dangerous situation without an adult figure to look after her. So a little dodgy as far as the messaging on that one. But there was the one tale about the babysitter put the kids to bed and went downstairs. I think it was maybe a basement. Went downstairs to watch TV in the basement. Was watching TV, and you know, it was comfortable because she could watch TV and it was quiet, so she wouldn't wake the kids. But she didn't like that the father, who had his kind of rec room down there, had this very odd clown statue. It was really creepy, creeped her out, but whatever, it's just a statue. She's watching TV, and at one point the parents call and they say, "Hey, how are the kids? You know, we might be running a little bit late." And the babysitter says, "Everybody's gone to bed, everybody's fine. But, you know, Mr. Smith, like, really, like, what's up with that clown statue in the basement? It's just really creeping me out." And then silence on the other end. And then Mr. Smith comes back and says, "Get out of the house. Get out of the house. I don't have a clown statue." And so, yeah. Clowns. Why did it have to be clowns? Nice use of a Indiana Jones quote there. So wait, oh, here's one. Babysitter and the clown stuffed animal that ends up being an escaped convict. Clown stuffed animal. That's when you take an animal and you just stuff a clown inside of it. But yeah, escaped convict. There's a lot of good ones out there. I quite like those spooky urban legends. I always liked the ones with the hooks for the hand, and maybe we'll do that next time. So with that said, I'm going to wrap things up here. But before I go, first off, say hi to me. Twitter, Instagram. Go give it a like over there. If you're on Twitter, if you're on Instagram, I appreciate your guys' likes and follows. It's helpful to me. It's how I survive. And also, I'm co-host of this awesome new podcast called Nightmerica. Check it out. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. This week, we have tales from the internet about haunted Facebook profiles and murderers that lurk dating apps. And also, we have episodes of set on boats, set in parks, set in, I forget what the other one was. Oh, shopping centers. And on top of that, I'm gonna say, certainly no pressure, but I am, you know, a working creative. So if you ever decide you want to give me, you know, the tip jar is open. If you ever feel generous, you know, there's the Venmo for it. You could just throw a little tip in the jar to say that you appreciate doing this. If not, certainly no pressure. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep talking. And then I must end with, of course, we've got Dead Run, the novel, available only on Amazon Kindle by Mr. Mike Maddox. I encourage you guys to check that out, download it, give it a read. You know what? In addition to the sort of the post-apocalyptic tale that you can read, it's also a good use of your time because, I mean, the character in this book gets to cover a lot of ground, and that's exactly what we are not able to do right now. So enjoy that. You know, live vicariously through the characters in the book. And finally, wherever you guys are, thanks for joining. If you have ideas for topics, we're still going back and forth with the technology here, but if you have ideas for topics, things you would like me to talk about, I think maybe the next topic is best movies best paranormal movies or adaptations. So I think I might go with that one next. But if you have topics you think I should go with, please hit me up and let me know. Meanwhile, finally, Robin, thank you for joining me. It's good to see you. Zachary, love you, brother. Good to see you, man. It's been way too long. Catherine, yes, perfect episode. Let's do it. Chad, thank you for being here. I'm just giving you guys all shout outs. Elena, yes, I definitely think we should talk about haunted tiki bars such as Mai Kai down there in Fort Lauderdale, which is also a great tiki bar. I love it a lot. Jack, love you too, brother. Thank you again for being here and being like just a good constant support. Dory, thank you. I'm glad you're here. Stuart Duff, I think I know you. And I'm glad you're here. Stuart Duff, you should actually check out the Uprocks article that I contributed to. There's even a shout out to Scotland in that one. And Andrew, thank you for being here. And thank you for enjoying the spooks and for sharing some of your own tales over the last couple nights. So guys, you're all very awesome people. And Monica, oh my God, it's been way too long. Give me a call, girl. Like, let's talk. All right, guys, you have a great night. Take care of one another. Remember, we'll get through this together. We're going to do it by standing together and staying apart.